Happy Black History and Hispanic Heritage Month. And so, since Miles is Afro Latino, I decided to combine both. And I'm here today to talk to you about Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. This movie came out in 2018 and it was a phenomenon. It had a budget of 90 million and it made 384.3 million dollars and stuff. That is huge for an animated movie, and especially a movie that should, my opinion, should have been live action. And so when it comes to this movie, I truly believe that this is a result of Amy Pascal's email leak from the Sony thing. Because, she made those comments about Obama, and then that caused her to get demoted. And then because that happened in 2015. Next thing you know, in 2018, boom, this movie comes out. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's too much of a coincidence and stuff. And, this is a movie I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, just never really got around to it. I still haven't seen the second one yet, but I really want to. I love the Spider-Verse just in general. I remember when I first saw it in the 90s cartoon, it was amazing. And yeah, thank you, John Shemper, for coming up with that idea, him and his creative team. Because that predates the events of like Ultimate Spider-Man crossover, the whole Spider-Verse, comics, everything. And so, for the longest time, I've been wondering, what is taking Marvel or the MCU so long to bring Miles into live action? Or what's taking Sony so long to bring him into live action? And so when this movie got announced, I was a little irritated. So I'm all like, oh, you can't give him the live action treatment, but you can give normally, yeah, it makes sense to give Peter Parker the live action treatment. He's Peter Parker. Peter Parker is still my favorite Spider-Man. Miles has now become my second. I still like other Spider people. I still like Spider-Man 2099. I still like Scarlet Spider. That's in terms of Spider-Men. In terms of Spider-Women and girls, it's completely different. Gwen is what will be my very first. Sorry, Julia Carpenter or whatever her name is, but you can't beat Gwen. She's just too awesome. And so Miles has really become my second favorite Spider-Man, and it's all because of this movie. Now I've seen him in video games, and I saw him in animation in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon and in Marvel Spider-Man, and I love his costume. No matter what, I just love that costume. Not in this movie though. This one is an alternate version of the one from the comic. The one from the comic is just amazing, man. That's a great costume and everything. But for the longest time, the Scarlet Spider was always my favorite second Spider-Man. Now I like other Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man Noir. I like 2099 and stuff like that. But when I used to see Miles in video games and animation and stuff like that, he just really didn't so much do it for me. He had a cool look. It's just his personality was kind of boring. He was kind of made to be the biracial version of Peter Parker. But no real true personality of his own until this movie came around and they gave Miles some swagger. And I'm just like, man, he really feels like a character and he feels real in general. And the thing about Miles is that, he's Afro-Latino, Black and Puerto Rican. But honestly, I've always looked at Miles as Black. I've never really seen him as a Latino and stuff. And that's because normally when you see him in animation and stuff, he's always drawn more to look like a Black kid than he is a biracial one and stuff. The hair, the skin tone. But a lot of Afro-Latinos, they get that light brown skin color like Karen Ashley from the second Yellow Power Ranger and stuff. But it's he just always looked like a Black kid to me and stuff. And especially in this movie, he acts more like a Black kid than he does when you see a typical Latino kid and stuff. Because you rarely ever hear him talking about like his Puerto Rican heritage, him speaking Spanish. He speaks Spanish very little. Now he does speak it in this movie, but very little. And normally it's just like every time you see him depicted on screen, you always see more of his black roots than you do his Hispanic ones at times. The only time you ever see his Hispanic roots is when he's around his mom. And sometimes that can be very rare and stuff like that. And in this movie, he just seems straight up like a black kid and everything, especially when he's hanging out with his uncle and stuff. And it's kind of like, I really wish, I understand why they made him biracial and stuff. Like, I get the point when Bendis did that. But it's kind of like, I kind of wish Miles was black because they already have a Latino Spider-Man in like 2099. But he's half white and half Latino. I wish he was just all Latino and stuff. But it doesn't bother me or nothing like that. Like, I'm not trying to make it out to be like, oh, there's a problem, nothing like that. But it's just one of those things where I just never saw his other half, you know what I'm saying? And I wish his other half was explored a whole lot more, just like his black half and everything. Like, if you're gonna be biracial and make a character biracial, make the effort to have more of his like Latino heritage like come out, you know what I'm saying? Even in that video game, where like the first one, I forgot what it's called, when him and Peter was in it, still I didn't feel he was like Latino and stuff. I didn't see much of his Latino roots other than when I hear him vaguely speak Spanish. It's like, oh, that's right, you are like Afro-Latino and stuff. Anyway, this movie is just like phenomenal and everything. And I truly, like I said before, I believe it's because of like, the Amy Pascal thing. This movie had like 3 directors of all things. And it had 140 artists doing the animation. And at first, when I watched this movie on Netflix years ago, I did not like this movie. Like, whatsoever. And until I watched it like the second time, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm starting to like, come around and everything. And it's because like I knew going into this, it was going to be about the Spider-Verse and he was going to have like a team of people hanging out with him. But the thing that bothered me is that I didn't want a Spider-Verse movie. I just wanted a Miles solo movie. And I always felt both Disney, Marvel, and Sony, they didn't think that like an Afro-Latino kid can hold his own movie, because spearheading and stuff like that. I truly feel like they just had no faith in him. And that's why they teamed him with everybody else and had him mentored by that Peter Parker. And the reason why they had him mentored by Peter Parker is so he wouldn't get no hate. Because when Miles was first created, people hated his character. Then people came around and now they hate him again. Because now those like woke mob people think it's so fun to hate on everything now. You see the stuff talking about Miles Morales is Miles Morales and not Spider-Man. It's because they're hating on him again. And it's quite a shame. And so I truly feel like they felt like a kid of color could not spearhead his own movie and stuff. And so he needed an assist. And, and I hate that crap. And a lot of comic book companies do that with their comic book animated movies. DC does that a lot. You'll always see Superman or Batman hanging out with characters they had no business hanging out with. And it's like, why are they in this movie? Why can't Supergirl just have her own movie? Why can't the Flash just have his own animated movie? He don't need the Justice League. And so the tagline of this movie is that anybody can be Spider-Man. Anybody can put on the mask. Anybody can be that hero. And it worked to shut the haters up. Until now, when they're back to hating because they think it's fun to like hate and everything. But all in all, this was a really good movie. And it was really good to see like all these other Spider people. But this movie is very, very comedic and stuff. And I love when it comes to that the Peter Parker Spider-Man, like the one from like Miles' Earth and everything. I loved how his humor was so subtle, unlike that of the MCU. And as for like the other one who's like a slob, he was just like hilarious. And it was okay not to take him serious because he was down in the dumps and everything. Like he's literally a shell of his former self. And So when it comes to the humor, like the MCU Spider-Man, I'm sorry. I like Tom Holland and everything when he first showed up as Spider-Man, but when he had his solo movies, I was not a fan no more because they tried their best to make that man Iron Man Jr. and then just pull him away from being Spider-Man. He didn't become Spider-Man until the end of his third solo movie. Heck, in his third solo movie, he was still Iron Man Jr. with the Stark tech and everything. Like they couldn't give him his original, not the original Spider-Man costume, but the one that's the first one that Tony gave him that looks like a Spider-Man costume, not this armored crap and all this other mess. That really bummed me out. And it's just a shame. They really wanted to get as far away from the other movies and do their own thing. This is why I was glad about this movie, because when you see the blonde-haired Peter Parker, so much of his origin when he tells it is like very similar to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, which they realized those were the better Spider-Man movies and stuff. You see, there was no reference to the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man whatsoever in this movie. But all you saw was the Sam Raimi version. But it's not his that was in this movie. It's just like a variant of like his and stuff. But it was so cool to see all those Easter egg nods and stuff like that, it was just great. And then that last swing at the end of the movie by Miles was very similar to what Peter did in the Sam Raimi movie when he just hovered in the air with his arms out and just glided there for a while before he swung out and everything. That is something the Tom Holland movies missed. There was never no final swing until that last movie when he truly finally became Spider-Man and everything. And I love the artistic style in this. Like at first, everybody pretty much has like the same artistic style, just a little variation here and there from whatever dimension they're from. Of course, when they get into the other movie, it's completely different and stuff. But I love just how this movie looked like an actual real comic book. When Miles was trying to I think learn how to jump or something like that, and he's falling down, and you see the words coming out. You can see the him thinking in his head and the bubble coming up. And I was just I never thought in a million years that would ever work in a Spider-Man cartoon, and it did perfectly and stuff. I also love how when they told their origin story, the comic book was slapped down and and they were explaining who they are. There's no way they're gonna be able to do that in live action. They can only do that in animation, which now makes me wonder because the MCU is now bringing Miles in live action in a couple of years. How is he gonna be portrayed? Because Tom Holland still looks young. Is he gonna be just another Peter Parker sidekick? He's gonna be called Arachnid Boy. I hate when they do that crap. Or are they actually gonna have the balls to kill off Tom Holland's Spider-Man? It makes you wonder. And not only that, but if Miles do come into the fold or have his own solo movie, they got a lot to top. This movie is at the very, very top of Miles's introduction done in a fun way. In all those animated cartoons, he's just boring and everything. But here, they got a lot to live up to. And I don't think they're going to be able to do that in live action, especially with how the MCU is and how live action storytelling is. It's a hard bar to get above. Voice cast is phenomenal and everything. Now, personally, I don't like Chris Pine's voice as Spider-Man. I just don't. It's too deep and muddled. But Jake Johnson does an amazing Peter Parker voice. He's very humorous and stuff like that. The Chris Pine one was more serious, but it's just that deep voice. I just can't hear Spider-Man with a deep voice, And Jake was brilliant in this role. It's so sad to see how his Spider-Man's turned out. His wife left him because the job was more important. He's living in a crappy apartment. He's gained a lot of weight, but he's still doing the hero thing. And he's just a slob of his former self. And then, like, you know, the collider thing happened and he got transported to another world, where it was cool to see him mentor like Miles, but at first you can tell he was not into it whatsoever. And he really hated like just being there and just wanted to go home back to his normal life and everything. And it's really cool how he turned around and ended up just like loving Miles. Like he literally said, "Ah man, you learned how to do the thing on like command. Like I love you, man." And it was like a real dad, like, you know, son type moment. You know what I'm saying? But his methods of teaching are just so unorthodox and everything. And I hate to admit this, but Shamik Moore is my favorite voice actor to voice that of Miles. But I hate Shamik Moore because he turned his back on his own people. Because basically he was smelling himself. And I hate when black celebrities start to get some money, they just turn on their own race and just become like a sellout. And the reason why I hate his behind is because during the whole Black Lives Matter thing, when black people was getting shot up by like white cops and everything, he decided he's gonna diss Rosa Parks and talking about she had no business sitting at the front of the bus and all this other stuff. She should have sat in the back and blah 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 and all this. I hate his behind because of that. This man would not be where he is now. It wasn't for people like her and Martin Luther King and stuff like that, you know. And shame on him. And then, of course, he got in major trouble because, you know, it's gonna affect his bank account, and Sony, you know, were not happy. So he came out with a so-called apology video where he didn't even apologize. He doubled down wearing a white hoodie. I wonder why he wore a white hood for. And basically talking about she could have called like a black cab service or something like that. See, people like him and like, you know, Kanye West and Terry Crews, Tyrese Gibson, Snoop Dogg, Lil Wayne, Raven Simone, Idris Alba and everything. It's like once they start to get some money, they start smelling themselves. And it's just sad, like, you know, how, like, you know, people like them and Ice Cube and all of them just like turn their back on their own community and stuff when they're literally just dying in the street. Like Terry Crews, Tyrese Gibson, and Shamik, seriously, like they were literally just dying in the street, and they're all and like literally like Terry Crews and Tyrese, man, that was just like shocking. I was not expecting that whatsoever, but now I can see why Tyrese is the way he is and stuff like that. But like Terry Crews, I was like, man, when he did White Chicks, he was just playing himself. And you know, it's always those certain black celebrities who smell themselves like Raven Simone. And this is why I'll never forgive this dude. And I wish to God they would just replace him, but of course they're not. But like, you know, he only has like another movie to go, so whatever, I can stomach that. But it's like, I hate admitting it, but he is the best, like Miles. He gives so much character and depth in that character, but God, I hate him so much. Haley Steinfeld, as you know, I just like love to death. And so when I heard she was gonna be Gwen, I was happy. Man, Gwen is a surprising, like, you know, love of mine that I didn't even know about until like I was on YouTube and they were talking about Spider Gwen. This is when her without the mask, and she looks cooler without the mask and the hood over her head. But like I get why she puts the mask on, and you know, sometimes she can't go by Spider Gwen. So she either goes by Spider Woman or Ghost Spider and stuff like that. And as much as I love Haley and stuff, like I love her live action performances, I wish they didn't write her so dull and almost emo-ish and stuff like that. Like I love the version that I think Sabrina Carpenter, I think her name is. Oh, no, not her. Dove Cameron, or whatever her name is. Dove Cameron, or whatever her name. I like her version so much better because she has more like personality that they wrote into hers and stuff. And I like the little pink streaks in her hair to do the whole Gwenpool thing. And so like, you know, I just like really love her design. Like I didn't even realize, I always wondered like, why is there no spider logo on her? And then I realized, oh wait, it is. Her arms and the hoodie connect to like these other little dangling arms in like the suit, and it makes like a spider motif and everything. That's like really interesting and cool. And in this one, she's like a ballerina, so she wears like ballerina shoes and stuff like that. And but for the longest time, I couldn't understand her character in this movie and stuff, especially when she was at like the school. Cause I'm all like, I know those two date in the comics now, but I think she's from like a different reality in the comics and stuff. So I couldn't quite understand, but it's sad, like, how in her world, like, her dad is like pursuing her because he's a cop and doesn't really know who she is. And then Peter Parker's like the lizard and then he dies. And like, it's just like so sad and stuff like that. And I wish they would make a solo movie out of her because I'm tired of her teaming up with everybody. Whether it's these movies or it was those Marvel Rising things, they always have her in a team when she's a solo person. I love Spider-Man no, Noir. I remember him from the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, that Shattered Dimension thing. But I like him more serious, not goofy and silly like the one they did in here. But it was nice to see him with a trench coat and the hat finally. But Nicolas Cage did do a hilarious job doing it. I just wish they would have made him more serious and not just like a joke. Because there's really nothing to his character because he's just there as like a supporting role and stuff. Spider Ham is like really cool. I like this version so much more better than the one in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. It's just funny how like a pig bit like a spider and the spider turned into like a pig. And I love the Looney Tune reference. That was just like awesome. And John Mulaney, I think his name is, did like a really good job. And it was nice to see the movie short about how he got into that other dimension on the DVD. Kimiko Glenn did like a really cool job as like Penny Parker Spider-Man or Spider-Woman, or no, Spider, I should say. I don't know anything about her. This was the first time I ever seen her in like anything. I've never even seen her on Wikipedia and stuff. So it was really cool to see her, but you don't really know much about her because she's just like a supporting role character. But she's supposed to be like really smart with this high-tech spider suit and all this other stuff. I love the anime reference they did with her. I wish they would have went more hard on it, you know what I'm saying? I wish they would have had like that whole, how like that repetitive solo dialogue that they do a lot in anime, or repeat stuff just over and over. I wish they would have done that with her, that would have been like a nice nod. It was so great seeing Miss Frizzle as like Aunt May, like Lily Tomlin, like, it was just like funny and stuff. Liv Schreiber, I think his name is. Like, dude, he was a great kingpin. Very evil, very tough, very menacing. I just hate how he looked like a whale. But of course, he's the one who put all this crap in motion when he loses his family to crime because, they found out he's like the kingpin and then they hopped in the car and got in an accident. So he wants a collider built. And so he can find his family in a different dimension, which causes all the worlds to collapse on one another. And then the most cool aspect and the coolest villain in this thing gotta be by that of both Mahershala Ali's Prowler, which I remember the Hobie version one from the Spider-Man cartoon, but this one was just cool, man. Like this one's just scary and everything. I do wish they didn't kill him right off. I wish he would have been like, because in the comments he tries to persuade Miles to help him out in his crime and stuff like that, and to go easy on him and manipulate him. So I wish they would have done that here, but they didn't. And so but I do like the fact when he finds out Miles is Spider-Man, he no longer wants to kill him and stuff like that. But Catherine Hahn as like Dr. Octopus, man, she had a great suit, she had a great hairstyle. Her tentacles, like I like the little squishy ones. That was actually pretty cool. Even though I prefer more of the metal kind. But she was so charming as a villain because the thing is she's so evil, but she has this charming factor about her that it just throws you off and everything. I had no idea Zoe Kravitz was like Mary Jane Parker in this. And so basically, this movie is similar to the Ultimate comic books where you have Spider-Man on that Earth. He dies, and he dies by trying to stop the collider. He sees Miles is in like, the midst of the battle, and he has to like rescue him and stuff like that. But he ends up losing his life because when he merges with that collider, it starts to bring in other Spider-Men and Spider-Women from like other worlds. And then when he tells Kingpin that he knows what he's doing and it's never gonna work, he ends up killing him. There are other villains in here that don't really, they're just supporting roles, which is really lame. Like Green Goblin, how you gonna have him be a henchman to the Kingpin and just like, be in the beginning of the movie and nothing the rest. And then, there's Tombstone and there's Scorpion, but they're just hench people, which is really sad and depressing. And so, like, he tells Miles, it's up to you after getting bit by that spider, which, oh my God, dude, I did not know that 42 spider was like, when it comes to the other movie, the significance of it all, like they really thought this out in advance, especially with the bagel and that scientist. Like they really was thinking in advance when they made these movies and stuff. And so Miles feels like, okay, fine, it's my responsibility. I got these spider powers. It was a nice nod to the original comics, how Peter Parker was outside the window and being all like, he wished he couldn't stick to the wall, but then he wishes he could. And, it was great to see kind of like this. It felt like puberty. Like it really did. Of him like being a boy and becoming a man and getting his spider powers and, and hearing his voice in his head and the bubbles and everything. Like that was just like really fun to experience, which is something you don't always see in the live action because they have to be more serious and stuff. And him like buying that little like Spider-Man costume from Stanley. Ah, dude, rest in peace. So sad it was the last movie he ever did. And like him trying to learn his powers but can't because he's too scared to like jump from like a building. And then he meets like Parker B. Parker and stuff. Oh, no, Peter B. Parker. I'm getting my names mixed up. Only to be very disappointed in how that man is. But it's just the interaction between those two is what really sells the movie. Like you really feel like he is mentoring Miles just in the worst way possible. And the hello danger part, man, I love rewinding that part so many times. It's one of the best swings ever. And like I said before, how are they gonna top this in live action now? Like you can't do the same way you did it in the movie because you don't do the split screen thing. And I don't know, man. They're gonna have a hard time topping that in live action. So of course, when he fails, he meets the other spider people. And so basically, they're all gonna work together to stop like the Kingpin, but they have to get back home because they stay too long in that dimension. Their bodies get ripped apart. And so like, which one's gonna make that sacrifice? And Miles is like, it has to be me because it's my world. I have to stay here. But they're like, nah, it's too dangerous. And then it's so cool to finally see Peter B. Parker become a hero again. Like he's willing to make that sacrificial role. But why exactly is he doing it? Is it because he's that hero or because he has nothing to live for now, And because his home is like a mess and his marriage is a mess. And you know what I'm saying? So after going back and forth and everything, Miles is all like, yo, man, it's gotta be me. And Miles just really stepped up to the plate. And it's so great to see because he was just like a normal kid. And the thing that was really interesting, like I said, he has a much different personality set than any other Miles I've ever seen with this. He's basically a mini criminal, spray painting stuff and tagging it with his uncle and stuff. And his dad's like a cop. And his dad doesn't want him to go down that life. And, he feels that his dad's a huge embarrassment and everything. And and it's like the dad doesn't want to call the uncle, but knows he has to find like, his nephew and stuff. And all that dynamic about this new version of Miles is just so great. And so, of course, he stops the collider. Kingpin is like tied up and everything. And, and he just becomes Spider-Man after that. But of course, the even cooler part when I got to see Spider-Man 2099 at the end of the movie. That was so cool. I love this dude's suit so much. I've loved it ever since I first saw it back in like the 90s and I drew it and everything. He has one of the best suits ever and it's better in the video game and stuff. And I just love the setup with them. Dum, dum, boom, boom, music and everything, and that little holographic woman just like popping in, and he's just talking so cool, like he's a pimp and everything. Like I just loved it, and don't know what the heck is going on, but you have to like really listen to it, and then you find out, oh, okay, he's gonna start a team and everything. And then from the next movie, things kind of change. When you see Miles laying in the bed and he sees Gwen, he's younger in this movie, but in the next movie, he's older because time has passed. And then Miguel, the 2099 dude, is just like, he's just all buff now with a different costume. And, what I'm saying? And it's like, so it's something I can let slide, what I'm saying? I can't wait to see the second movie, man. And what was so great is that not only is this a great movie for everybody, but it was a great movie for people of color, especially that of Afro Latinos, because they got to see themselves in like Spider-Man. And it's just like the tagline says, anybody can be Spider-Man, anybody can put on that mask. When you race bend the character from all like, the modern television movie thing, it is not a big deal. It is great to see yourself in a great role, you know what I'm saying? And that's something that so many people, those anti-woke mob people, don't want people to have. They don't want them to have that experience. They don't want them to be happy. They complain, oh, all this diverse hiring is causing me not to have a job and blah, 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 blah. But they wasn't thinking about that when people of color could not get a job and they were the only ones that could. And so, also, I wanted to add, rest in peace, Steve Ditko, who made the original Peter Parker Spider-Man along with Stan Lee, both dying in the same year. How tragic. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.